Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. Starbucks announces racial bias training for all of its employees after being accused of racial profiling. A black teenager gets shot at by a white man after knocking on his door to get directions. And Sacramento police delay calling for medical help after shooting an unarmed black man 8 times. These are just a few of the recent headlines that have sparked protests and cries of racism. Here to talk about the attacks on Black America is the president of the Detroit branch of the NAACP, Reverend Wendell Anthony. Welcome back to American Black Journal.
Thanks, Stephen. Good to be with you, as always. These are crazy times.
These are super crazy times. I want to start maybe in a little bit of a different place. I think when you look at all 3 of those incidents I was talking about there in the open, I think you have to start to wonder about the cost and the burdens of integration on African Americans. And I don't think that's something we talk an awful lot about. 50 years after the legal barriers to integration fell, it's still too difficult, I think, to be black in a white space.
No question about it. I mean, people still want to talk about we live in a post-racial society, particularly since Barack Obama has been president and Oprah and all of the folk who seem to have made it. There are individual instances. But the fact that you and I, if we were to meet at a Starbucks potentially, could not sit there and wait for our third party. Might go to jail, might be shot. Something is wrong in America. America has a problem. The problem is not, folk want to say racism or economic inequality. It is ignorance. We are ignorant, Stephen. We're ignorant of each other. We're ignorant to the degree that we really don't understand each other. We're ignorant to the degree that integration and the fusion of different cultures should be a blessing, not a burden. And it is. How often have you heard of 2 whites being arrested in a Starbucks or any other place because they happen to be sitting there? Folks sit there all day with their computers, drinking water and having meetings. They don't even plan to meet, but they sit there. But these 2 black individuals could not do that. Young black boy, 14 years of age, in the daylight, being shot at because he needed help. Renisha McBride, Dearborn Heights, at midnight, 19-year-old, she needed help. Stephen Clark, in his backyard, shot 8 times. I mean, in his grandmama's backyard. So I'm saying we have a problem, Stephen, and Dr. King said it well, that the real danger of us is that so many of us have a conscientious ignorance and a sincere negativity when it comes to understanding the times in which we live. 50 years after his death, 50 years after the Kerner Commission. And you mentioned the fact that Starbucks is now going to do sensitivity training. That's good. The CEO apologized. But Stephen, who's doing the training? If the people doing the training are not indigenous to the people who are victims, there's still no. That's why we have a problem with the Michigan State Police. They want to train themselves. If you don't change the culture, I don't care how many folk you recruit, it's not going to be the same. You got to change it.
Some people might look at this and say that the answer for African Americans, and as a parent, whose kid walks home from school, I think some of the instinct is to say, retreat from those spaces of integration, right? Why should we go and risk the danger, the life-threatening danger in some cases, of dealing with that kind of integration? What's the argument that says that's not the approach?
Well, I think for me it's not the approach because that means I have to live beneath my privilege, and I'm not prepared to do that. All of America is mine. Not just a segment, not just the ghetto, not just the city, all of it. Don't mean I live in all of it, but I fought and died, so to speak, for all of America. When we go to war, we don't just fight for Michigan or for Detroit or for California. We fight for the United States of America. We blood, died, sweated, and shed bones for America. So to yield that, to yield what our folk have fought for, to put ourselves in a community where we do not have the advantages that America has. No, that's going backwards. We are not going to do that. Even though we have a president that wants to categorize people as murderers and rapists, as coming from S-hole countries, if you come from Africa, as being of no significance, of wanting more folk from Norway who look like him.
Right.
When, that is the tone of America. We cannot allow ourselves to be subject to that. Being black in America is not a crime, Stephen. I mean, that's why we're having this forum on May the 5th, the Dr. Ron Walters National Town Hall meeting on being black is not a crime, from people from Rochester, with the police department, with policymakers, free, open to the public. Call 313-347-2820. I'm trying to get that in before we bust up. 347-2820 to register and to come aboard, because being black is not a crime. And I'm simply saying that, Stephen, you and I and others have come too far to be turned back now. America is better than this.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the region here in Southeast Michigan, Rochester Hills. Those are places we've seen in the news before when it comes not just to overt racism or discrimination, but I'm thinking of the Walking Man story from a few years ago in the Free Press, where you've got somebody walking 20 miles back and forth to work because the buses don't run, and through all of those communities. There's still this willful, even if it's not overtly called racist, there's still this willful pushback against the idea that, as you say, being black is not a crime, and that black people can live and work where they want.
And have the duty and the responsibility and the privilege to do so. Whether you're walking, sitting, standing, running, you still find yourself at risk. And until we as a nation come to grips with that, until we recognize that none of us are safe until all of us can be safe and feel safe, we got a problem. And one of the things that we find, there are studies that show that this impacts not only the racial issue, it impacts the academic issue. Black boys are still being expelled 5 times greater than their white counterparts. Black people are still getting sentenced in jail much harsher for the same criminal offenses than their white counterparts. Black folks still cannot get mortgages and home loans based, no matter how much money they have as their white counterparts. And this is 50 years after Dr. King talked about a dream. He not only had a dream, he had a plan. Don't leave him on the mountaintop dreaming, because then you don't have him down in the valley working with his plan. The plan is for us to come together as a nation and to resolve some of these issues. The plan is for you to look at me and me to look at you as human beings, not as individual who is black, therefore I got to be guarded, or not as an individual who is white, therefore I got to be protected, to the degree that we all can come together. And I think, Stephen, it's important that those of us who know better have to do better. We will be judged for this generation not by the noise of the bad people, but by the silence of the good people. You cannot be silent. That's why I'm so glad to be on American Black Journal talking to you, because I know I ain't going to be silent, and you ain't going to let me be silent.
That's right. Never. Of course not. Before we run out of time, I do want to ask you about what is it that black people, just regular old black folks who live in this country, what can they do? What moves the needle on this stuff? We're talking about 50 years now of it not moving nearly far enough. What are we supposed to be doing?
I think that I must say what Dr. King said when he talked about, you know, how can I get other folk to love me and to have some heart? And he responded that, you know, my position is that would be nice if they did love me, but I'm trying to keep them from killing me. So therefore, it has to be about policy. We got to work on policy. We got to work to make sure that we elect the right people who enforce policy. Trump is enforcing policy. While we're looking at all the mess he's doing, he's putting in judges that's going to be there for a lifetime. He's changing immigration policy. We got to look at policy. You can't stay home for the midterms. You got to elect people who are sensitive to these issues. You got to speak up. You got to stand up, and you cannot be afraid. We have the right to live where we want to live, to associate with whom we want to associate, to love whom we want to love, to go to school where we want to. We have fought and died for that, and we cannot surrender that. And I would say now is the time for all people, white, black, red, yellow, to stand up and to be mellow when it comes to speaking up for that which is right and that which we must have in order to make America not great again, but to make America be what America should be again. That is a home for all of its people, regardless color, creed, or situation they may have been born in.
Yeah.
America can do that, but we have to do it.
I've got you here. I want to make sure I ask this question about the Democratic slate for the fall here in the state of Michigan. Speaking of progress and lack of diversity, is that a slate that can win in the state? Can it pull the votes that it needs out
Even
from
what does it have to do with what
African-Americans?
we're talking about? Why you asking me?
Because I got you here.
Let me just say, the slate needs to be diverse. You cannot talk about diversity and then display
And not do
none.
it, right?
It has to be diverse. I'm hoping and praying and working that as before we see August and November, that slate will have some diversity. I mean, there's still a position there
There's
for
opportunity.
the lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
There's still, and then two, diverse in terms of your programs, your policies. Where do we fit in the economic thing? Where do we fit in terms of the appointments of universities, and where do we fit in the economic development? So there's some ways in which you can reach out. Right now, the slate begs for some diversity.
Yeah. All right. Reverend Wendell Anthony, always great. to
Thank
talk
you,
to
Steve.
about
Always
these
good to
things.
be with you, man. Good to
Yes,
see you.
Good to see you on the show.